Hey, if you've clicked on this and you spent any time on the center's YouTube channel watching my videos, please listen to this video on sin so that whenever you hear that word, it doesn't scare you away or offend you or make you angry, perhaps justly. So this video is for new people to the center, either to the center's YouTube channel or people that are coming to the center or considering coming to the center. And one of the members of our meditation center has asked me to do this video because she knows that some of her friends are turned off by my use of the word sin in videos. So, and I get it because I came from a totally non-Christian upbringing. And the word sin, and then everything I read up until I got involved in the New Testament had really denigrated the use of the word sin by Christianity, and I think often cases justly, because it seems like there's a branch of Christianity that is too hard on people and is always pointing the finger at others and calling out the sin in the world in a way that is deeply condemning. And I would say that also borders on and also sometimes becomes judgmental. So if that has turned you off, if the word sin turns you off, please try to listen to this video and let's see if we can get a better understanding of it, at least for the purposes of the center and what we're doing. So I'll do my best. This is not easy to do. I'd rather be in person talking to a person about it, one-on-one. But let's start by saying that sin has two planes that it operates on. One is called the horizontal plane and the other is the vertical plane. When sin is horizontal, it has to do with how our behaviors towards other human beings harms them or ourselves. And sin would be involved in the harm done to another through our actions and behavior, language, speech, and actions. But sin would also come into play when it has to do with how we maybe harm ourselves in our actions with others. And you might say, well, who would do that? But, if you do inventory and you get some self-knowledge down, a pretty fair percentage of the population finds out that they place themselves in a position to be harmed by others through their own sin. And so harm could be towards you, another person, but it also is vertical in the sense that it affects your relationship with God. And I want to be very clear about this part especially. There's nothing you can do that will keep God from loving you. That's not the Christian message at all. The Christian message is that while you're in sin, while you're very far away from God, no matter how lost of a soul a person may be, God absolutely loves them first and seeks them out to help and to heal them. And so the first thing you need to know is that if someone says you're a sinner, or if, like in my videos, I say, hey, let's do some inventory and discover what your sins are, or if I say I'm a deeply sinful person, there is an understanding in that. If you need this video, then those things I've just said probably cause you discomfort. They make you feel very uncomfortable, and I am certain you wouldn't feel like that if you had a proper understanding. But it is almost grounded outside of sin, the proper understanding, because for me, I know that every day, the ideal for my life today is to love everyone in thought, word, and action. The idea is to be a channel for God's light and love in this world, in my family, my home life, my work life, my friendships. That's the goal, to not seek after self, but to seek after the betterment of those around me, and to truly come in the name of God, and not overtly and preachy, but just to really bring joy and love and peace to people. That's my job. And maybe the simplest way to understand sin is it's every time I fail to do that. It's every time annoyance creeps in or judgment creeps in or selfishness creeps in that keeps me from loving fully the other. And if you start to take a really close look at your thoughts, motivations, and actions and your words, if you look at all of those planes, what you think inside, what's going on inside, maybe you don't say it. If you're raised to a certain degree with a certain degree of quality, you may very well only think these things and won't say them. But Christianity would still say, yeah, but internally, there's still all this smoldering anger or judgment or hatred or resentment, arrogance, pride, lust. There's all kinds. You're at a dinner party. Someone brings their wife or husband, and you're lusting over their wife or husband, and you don't say anything, and you don't do anything about it, which is great. But Christianity would say, but still, there is a rift immediately between you and your spouse just because you're lusting over this person. Even if you don't intend to act on it, there's still a rift. It's still a potential deep harm you could be causing your partner. And also, that couple sitting there, are they fully safe? Can they let their guard down completely? Can we be innocent and naked in front of one another, naked metaphorically speaking? Can we be naked in front of one another, knowing that everyone at the table has perfectly clean motives, and that if they don't, they immediately shy away from those sinful motives and seek God in prayer to heal them? See, if we lived in a society like that, everyone could trust and love and connect and open without barriers and walls. But instead, what we find is people hold secret motives. And lust is just one. There's also social motives, wanting to vie for position within the social community. And we're just using a dinner table as an example. 5 or 10 people meet for dinner. What is motivating each of us in that situation? Is it to help, to lift up, to bring peace, to bring comfort, to bring understanding to everyone? Or are we also motivated by petty and selfish motivations for social status, to be seen a certain way, to be perceived a certain way? Is there jealousy involved? Are we sometimes jealous of the other? All of this is what we mean by sin. And so when you hear the word sin at the center, and in any Christian system that knows what it's doing, you're not condemned in the sense that you're in trouble. There should be no sense of I'm in trouble when you hear the word sin. In fact, everyone I know that is at a certain point of maturity on the Christian journey, when they say I am a sinner, it brings them a deep peace and a deep comfort. And why would that be? Well, there's a real peace and comfort in it just finally admitting the truth. Everyone says I'm a good person, and honestly, most people are good people, really. But every time I get to know someone deeply and they start meditating and doing self-examination, and they start comparing themselves to the truth rather than to themselves as the standard of what is good, everyone starts to notice they fall short all day long in 100 different ways. There's an Old Testament scripture that says, the just person falls down 7 times a day and gets back up again. And what do they mean that even the just, even the good, even the truly good fall 7 times a day and then get back up? So when we talk about sin, there is no sense of condemnation. There's no sense of shame. There's no sense of now you're unworthy as a human being. There's a deep peace that comes from, yes, I do fall short all the time from the highest good. Think of it in those terms. Just if I could come to that dinner party with the motive to, it doesn't have to be preachy, obviously. It shouldn't be. But to really truly lift up everyone and bring everyone up and bring peace or joy or humor or interest, to care about another, to let someone be heard. If I came to that party with those motivations, I would be so much further on to doing our highest good. And sin, our insecurities, our selfishness, our fears, our jealousies, our lust, our resentments, our self-pity, our anger, our greed, all of those things cause us to distrust one another and mistreat one another, either overtly through direct action that is sinful, or that what they call the sin of omission. So there's sins of commission, and then there's sins of omission. Sin of commission is when you're hard on someone and mean to them for no reason, or you steal, or you lust after someone's husband or wife, or you covet their wealth or their success, and that leads to jealousy and less love towards them. That's all direct. But what about the sin of omission? What about the sin of, I didn't bring love tonight at that party? I was wrapped up in myself. I was wrapped up in my own concerns, and I just missed all these opportunities. Sally said something, and it was a little self-depreciating, and you could tell there was a wound in there, and I was so wrapped up in myself, I missed that opportunity to bring her comfort and affirmation or some love, or even just some understanding, some mutual understanding. So when we talk about sin, it's not a finger we're pointing out to the world to condemn the world. It's more the way we look at our own selves and examine our behavior and see where we fall short of love, where we fall short of being a peacemaker, where we fall short of bringing a light bringer, being a light bringer, where we fall short of just hearing genuinely another human being and being interested in them so that they go home and someone noticed them. Someone appreciated them, so they go home feeling appreciated. These are the kinds of things we're talking about when we discuss sin. And it brings a Christian comfort to know they're a sinner because, first of all, it's just true. It's truth brings peace. Some forms of mental illness are really various kinds of delusion, where people have delusions about themselves. Narcissism is getting all the press now. But narcissists are deeply wounded inside. And the degree of their narcissism, decides the degree to which they're aware of that wounding. But, the overt narcissist, they have a supreme confidence in themselves, an unwarranted confidence. They just think so highly of themselves. But that's because of a wound deep inside. That's what it is. That person is wounded. They may be so far gone you can't touch that wounding. You can't relate to them in any natural human way because they're so walled off from that, and they've created this, egoic personality that's so big and powerful, and they never step out of it. So you may not be able to have a genuine interaction with that person, but that's that person's sin. And it comes from a wounding deep inside. So, and everybody, not everyone's a narcissist, of course, but everyone is like that. Everyone has wounds. Much of it we didn't have any choice about. Our upbringing has a lot to do with how much pain and suffering we have. And, and that's another thing to take into account with sin. Christians feel peace about their sin because we come to understand how we got where we are. And, it's called self-knowledge. And you start meditating and you start doing inventory and you start thinking about, bringing love and light, and you start coming up against the parts of you that just can't do that or won't do that. You start thinking about sin of, harming others and coveting other people's stuff and lusting over other people's spouses, and, the degree to which we seek after wealth as a primary motivation, or social status, power in the world. Anyone who gets on a path after, not quickly, but after a while, months or years, they just slowly begin to see how disordered their motivations are. And it gets more clear over time. There's a saying I heard, I was the longer I do this path, the sicker I was when I started. Because you just see how messy it is. But if you have Christian humility and you've come to accept that this is the plight of humanity, it certainly isn't just you. It's not as if you do your self-knowledge and your work, and you're sitting in a restaurant, let's say, and everyone around you is so neat and so perfect and couldn't possibly have those kind of motives, and it's just you. That is the way our ego likes to view sin, and that's the reason it just hides from it. It doesn't want to see it. It just can't. It's painful to think, oh, look how messed up I am, and everyone around me isn't. But, I've been on this path a long time, and I've met a lot of people who've done the work from, my specific spiritual center and others. And the truth is, everyone finds out that's how they are. We're not all the same, but we're all sinful. We're all missing the mark. We're all driven by motivations, sometimes as a result of wounding from our childhoods, that are sinful, that are anti-life, that are anti-connection, that harm our human relationships. And that's what sin is. And then, so you really, unless you believe there's nothing right or wrong and you can do anything you want, and there's never anything you could do ever that was wrong, you agree with sin. You just haven't liked the word or the way the word's been used. But there's one more dimension to sin, which is the vertical dimension, which is Christianity will say often that it offends God. And I don't like that language because I know what it means. I like what it means. But if I take it in the way that God is literally offended and upset and shocked, scandalized by my behavior, then I have a God that is petty and small. So the notion that my sin offends God is true, but it's true if it's understood correctly. And so the way to think about that dimension of sin, which some people, there's very secular movements within Christianity trying to sort of, unhook people from the notion they can offend God, and sin is really just horizontal, it's not vertical. But I think that's extremely short-sighted and naive and ignorant of a lot of things. I'm not a huge fan of that perspective at all. Because for me, my awareness of sin is primarily vertical. And here's what I mean by that. So you have cultivated, let's use a person as an example, some hypothetical person has cultivated a relationship with God. And we know God is love. God's attributes are love and truth, honesty, peace, joy, humility. There's all these attributes that God is these things. And so a person has cultivated a relationship with that power, so they're participating now in love and joy and truth and peace, right? And they're living in such a way that this connection is maintained. This connection with these attributes is maintained. And there's a clean channel between them and that power. Well, when a person sins, they live, speak, think, or act in a way that is incompatible with this power. And so it's not as if God, who is a person, God is personal. It's not just a power. It's not electricity. It's a power that knows and loves. So it's not as if God says, oh, you sinned, I must pull away, you've offended me. That's language in the Bible. But what does it mean? What are they describing? And what they're describing is the incongruity. You can't remain. It's like, how do you enter into love if you won't love? How are you supposed to, like, God is love. So let's just talk about love only as the attribute. If God is love and you're interacting with someone and you will not love them, you will not, or you cannot, or both, then you frustrate your experience of your connection with God directly in that way. It's mechanical even. It's just a matter of fact that I'm living a big chunk of my life in relationship with human beings and animals and creation, nature itself, and even just physical objects. And the truth is, if I want to always experience my connection with love, God's love, then I can't hold motives and attitudes and judgments that are unloving towards others. Try to let that sink in. That's about as good as I can say this. That's about the best I can do. That's the vertical dimension of sin, where it harms your connection to love. It harms your connection to joy. It harms your connection to peace. It harms your connection to what we interpret as God's forgiveness, right? God forgives. God is forgiving. And I'm living in that forgiveness as a Christian because I'm forgiven. But now I condemn the other and will not forgive. Now I'm in incongruity with the power that I say I'm trying to come to union with, right? Because that's the idea of Christianity, to come into union with these powers, to come into harmony with, to resonate with. The Orthodox Church has many sayings that we become like God by participating in God's energies. So we're participating in these energies, and then if I won't forgive and I won't love, then I'm choosing to experience a reality outside of God. That's the thing. And so that's the vertical dimension of sin. So it isn't just that I've harmed others, although that really matters, because God wants everyone to live in that harmony. And then, when I go and harm another person, I won't forgive them. That hurts them, makes it harder for them to come to love. So the horizontal sin matters so much, but it's the vertical sin that is the most important, I think, because I can't live well with my neighbor if I don't first live well with God. So think of it in that way. God is joy and peace and love and a ton of other lesser qualities, I think lesser, that are the result of those things, joy and peace and love, like truth and honesty and justice and comfort and all these other qualities that you get from experiencing God's presence. And if you look at it from that light, that's our invitation to live with God in this way. Okay, and then now look at how many of our behaviors and motives and attitudes and thoughts are contrary to those qualities and energies. They're just contrary to it. They're in the way. And, and some of them are just dastardly, like, infidelity in a marriage is dastardly. It is, for me to be at a dinner party and to lust after another person's wife is scoundrel level activity. It is ruffian. It's a bandit. This couple has children, 3 or 4 children, and they're happily married, but maybe the wife is vulnerable she has low self-esteem. And so if a man gives her attention, maybe her father didn't give her a lot of attention, and so she's gone through her whole life wanting a male's attention. So then if I give her attention and see her as so neat, she's vulnerable to that. Now that's her own sin to clean up, but she is vulnerable to that. And so if I give her attention and it's sexually motivated, I have an interest in her, I'm now saying, as a human being who wants the union with God, who wants to be love and true, that I'm willing to risk destroying an entire family based on my selfish desire. That is profoundly sinful. It is profoundly sinful. Okay, so I hope that makes sin clear. But let's say you're listening and you've done that, or you're doing that, or you're doing something else like it. It has nothing to do with the sexual sins. It could be greed. It could be, it could be social, pride, wanting to be so special, and you're vying for place in the social community and maybe subtly putting other people down so you can build yourself. Let's just say you're involved in sin. How should you feel about that? If you were totally Christian, if you said, look, these Christians are so judgmental and they're so hard on sin, I got enough troubles on my own. I don't need them accusing me of being bad. So how would it sound if you went to a qualified spiritual instructor and you said, look, I'm doing the lust thing. Or, but it could have been, I'm vying for attention in my community and subtly insulting others to build my reputation and trying to win people over to me instead of them because I'm jealous, manipulative, dishonest, evil acts. Okay, but how are you to feel if you're one of those people doing that? And that's where I think people don't know how sweet Christianity is to the sinner. So if you had a good spiritual director, it would I don't know what they would say. There's so many kind of approaches, but a good spiritual director would say, first off, that's deeply sinful. And you could destroy a family this way. Or you could destroy this person. You could hurt them deeply if you damage their reputation. What if they're ousted from the circle? What if we don't know it? What if that confidence they seem to display is really a cover-up for deep wounds? And this is the last straw for them. And if you hurt them in this social situation deeply enough, they'll never open up again. Like a Christian spiritual director would want to help you see that this sin does matter. It really matters. But then they would say, but so what? Not so what, keep doing it. But don't now feel terrible and shameful and subhuman and don't crash because of that. Instead, just honestly admit that's what you've been up to. Go and do your own self-examination and find out what wounds and lacks are driving you. You might have been paying attention to that woman or that man in that marriage because you yourself feel a lack of self-esteem and you've always gotten attention from the opposite sex and it's affirmed your existence and made you feel valuable. And you might be vying for position in social situations because in your family of origin, that's how everyone did it, and you were at the bottom end of that. And once you became an adult, you decided, never again. I'm never going to be at the bottom end of that again. I'm going to play the game better. And maybe that's just what motivated you, and there's pain motivating you. So the Christian approach would want to help you discover what exactly is driving all of that. Let's come to understand you, because you're not evil. I mean, you certainly there are reasons. They may not be good reasons, but there are reasons why you've come to where you are, and it's understandable. And there's love and compassion there for you because you're spiritually sick. And what's God's response to your spiritual sickness? It's love. It's to want to enter in and heal that sickness. It's not God's desire to stop at condemning you and saying, oh, you're sinful, you're evil, you're on the way to hell. That's not enough. That doesn't change people's hearts. It's more like this. You're not. These behaviors are not in congruity with, first of all, God's love and light, but also with who you are as a human being at the core. Christianity says God made you. Christianity believes that God created you. You're one of God's ideas. And that in some sense, you're made in the image of God. And that means that there is true goodness in you. And there is love in you. Sin is sin because you're capable of love. Maybe not yet, but you're capable of being rehabilitated and healed and brought into love. Right? I was just thinking of a woman that just keeps popping into my mind. I don't know why, but I know she's cheated on her husband. And when I met her, I didn't know anything about her yet. But when I met her, I was just instantly, I really liked her. I liked her a lot. And I think she's a really good person. And so then I asked around about her, and someone said, yeah, she's a really good person. She's so neat and so sweet and wonderful, but she is having an affair. But she's having an affair because she's in such a difficult marriage where she feels like she cannot be herself. She cannot act and do the things she wants to do. It's too much control, too much pressure. And she feels stuck and rigid and sometimes gives up, and she'll once in a while cheat. And look, that's not okay. But look at all the reasons behind it. And God would see this woman and say, oh, my precious, precious daughter, who I love. Let me heal you. Let me heal you. Let me heal your fears, your anxieties, your insecurities. Let me heal your loneliness. Let me come into your life and your soul and your mind and your heart and heal you. And then maybe you can find a way to navigate this marriage without cheating. Maybe you could do something other than being dishonest and potentially deeply hurtful to this human being. Let's find a way forward for you to live a healthy, happy life that does not require you to sin so deeply and risk harming your children so greatly. That's how God would handle a person involved in infidelity. It isn't condemnation and you're bad and you should feel terrible. There's an element of that, a little, of course. But your behavior is bad, you aren't bad. Your behavior is irresponsible and harmful and selfish, but you are only being irresponsible, harmful, or selfish. You are a child of God, and God would want to start to rehabilitate that person and dwell in them and start bringing some security and some peace into that person's life so that they don't need to do those things anymore, or so that they don't believe they need to, or so that they're not willing to do those things and cause such harm in another person's life. And God loves the sinner, God, the person who's sinning, and that's me and you and everyone on earth. God loves us, and it starts with that love. And if preachers sometimes haven't made that clear, I think within Christian community, it's usually clear that you're not condemned by God. There's a lot of times when it isn't, but by and large, I generally think Christians feel like they're not in too much trouble with God because they know about love and forgiveness. But when preachers irresponsibly point the finger out into the world and condemn and cast such heavy language on them all the time, without bringing in all the love parts, then I think they give the world the wrong view of sin and the wrong view of what sin means in a Christian context. So I hope that all helps. You'll see it in my spiritual community when a person crosses a certain threshold. There are, reliable stages of Christian growth, and we know what they are. And when a person crosses a certain threshold, they start to feel comforted by saying, I am a sinner. But it's because of all these elements that are in place. It's a relief to no longer pretend otherwise. It's a relief to not be in denial anymore about ourselves. It's a relief to just admit and come to God just naked and say, here I am, man, and this is what I am. And there's a deep peace that comes with a certain level of maturity where you can say that and find comfort in just being true. And then that person that can do that, it's the second beatitude. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And that's the thing about the comforting that comes. So, blessed are those who mourn. you know, that means, well, it means a lot of things, but one of the things it means is mourning our behavior. Just seeing it and thinking, wow, this is just terrible. And maybe I don't act on it, but even thinking it all the time is just terrible. If people knew what I was thinking, it would be horrible. And why am I thinking all of this? And where's love while I'm thinking all of this? If people could come to God and say, here it is, God, I'm so filled with jealousy and pride, and I'm lost sometimes, and I'm insecure, and I've got hurts and wounds that make me overly sensitive, and man, God, it's just a mess, and I'm so sorry. And please, God, I give you permission just to heal me. Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And that's what comes then. A person that can come with that kind of humility, that is, just ready to just come to God naked and bare, then that person receives comfort from God. And then seeing the truth about oneself in regards to sin brings comfort rather than discomfort. Okay, I think that's the whole video. So this was, for people that are new, but I'm sure others will listen also. Try to hear this. And then if you listen to my videos and I talk about sin, remember this. Don't hear condemnation. Don't hear everyone's bad, but us Christians are great. Don't hear what you may have heard elsewhere. I don't know, you might have, but you also might have misunderstood some things. But don't hear that. Hear it from a deep perspective of just looking at humanity and seeing how far short we just generally do fall of love. And that a spiritual path is an ascent towards love. It's an agreement that I will now ascend towards peace and joy and love and forgiveness and other seeking instead of self-seeking. It's a path towards self-transcendence, transcending the self, not by not having a self, but just where the self maybe isn't your center of attention all the time, right? Self-centered. So always thinking about me, well, you become other-centered and God-centered. And your world gets bigger. It's expansive. It's mind expanding, and it's consciousness expanding. But there are real wounds in the way that are in the way of that make that hard to do. And an authentic spiritual path provides a way to see those disorders and face them squarely in a healthy way that psychologically allows for growth and healing rather than keeps one stuck forever in guilt and shame. And also in the more extreme forms of Christianity where they're way out of order with this, the other thing people do is they just pretend that they're not sinning. You can't be accepted in the community unless you're already perfect. Everyone's acting perfect. And so then everyone has to hide their sin, and their sin has to go underground because the community wouldn't accept them. And that's, we can't have that. That's an unhealthy community because that just means you got to pretend. You got to become fake. You got to pretend to be something you're not. I'm Christian now, so let's say you had a porn addiction and it's 3 years till you're all the way past porn. You're going to get free, but let's just say you're not quite free yet. Every once in a while you cave and you watch pornography. Man, you got to be in a Christian community healthy enough to hear that and not condemn you. That just only judges your heart. If they know you're serious about coming to God and letting that be healed, okay, welcome to the club. Maybe someone else isn't watching porn, but they're still jealous of their neighbor. They might covet their neighbor's stuff, house, possessions, finances, husband, wife. We can all say, gosh, me too. I'm also so sinful, so filled with it, and I admit it, and I know that sin is sin, and I do want to be different, but it takes time to be healed. And that's a healthy community. Okay, thanks for watching this video, and I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to title this video to get people to watch it. I think if I mention sin, it's going to get 40 views instead of 140, so we'll see. Thanks, everybody.